Welcome to today's webinar on executing on plans and projects using Daylite. My name is James, and I am part of the customer success team here at Market Circle. We're going to break down today's webinar into a few topics. So we're going to talk a little bit about organizing all the moving pieces and steps using a project, keeping track of project details and communications and decisions, keeping track of who has to do what by when and knowing if it's done, prioritizing work so people are focusing on what's most important, streamline the process for managing work for you and your team, and last but not least, avoiding things slipping through the cracks. So to execute on our plans and projects, we're going to want to have a place where we can organize and connect all the moving pieces and information that's going to be specific to a project, including the work that needs to be done. We're just going to use my personal Daylite account where I have some mock clients and just some mock projects that we can play around with. Now, when you start working on a plan or a project, this could be work for a client or a customer that's hiring you for, maybe a job that you need to do for your employer, internal work that you want to accomplish for yourself, maybe revamping a website, internal team building, any other plan that you have. There's going to be a lot of information to manage. The details specific to the project, the people involved and how they're involved, to any activities or communication that you're going to want to remember. Being able to keep all this information together is important. So when you work on a project, you can stay on top of what's been done and what needs to be done next without having to waste time looking for information, whether you're working by yourself or with a team. Now, when you have a lot of projects on your plate, that's when it becomes more likely to have important to-dos slip through the cracks, maybe lose sight of what project to focus on next, or even forget what was discussed or even decided on in a previous conversation. And it's these types of events that often lead us to really feeling stressed and unsure of what we need to prioritize next. So it's extremely important to have a process in place. This way we can prioritize the work that we need to do, and that way we can focus on the most important tasks to ensure that we are executing on our plans and projects. Now, since we have a project to keep all those moving pieces and steps, let's break it down a little bit further. So we're going to role play. We'll create a new project together. And this way we can see how easy it is to organize all this information together. So in this scenario, a company is going to hire me to host an educational event. So we're going to use a project to manage the event that I'm being hired to speak at. So we're going to call this project Host a Seminar for Acne Inc. Now, within the project record, I'm going to have different fields that I can use to track some information that's going to be specific to the project itself. So keywords will let me tag terms or phrases that are going to help me better describe the type of project that I'm taking on. So in this case, I'm going to set online webinar and execute on plans and projects as keywords. I know the seminar is being done online using an online webinar service, and I also want to track the type of content that the seminar is going to be covering. So this is going to be useful down the road. I'll actually be able to see a breakdown of the type of events that I work on and the type of content that I discuss. Something we'll actually be able to see a little bit later when I showcase the Insight view. The category is going to let me define a single top-level classification, which at the same time color codes the project. So in this scenario, I'm going to give it a category of seminar, since the project is going to be about managing all the information around the seminar that I'm hosting for Acne Inc. Categories and keywords are also useful to help organize, segment, and even report on your projects later. So if you do have any questions about leveraging them, after the webinar, when I follow up with that recording, as I mentioned, I'm also going to have links to get in touch with the team. So be sure to schedule a chat, and we'd be more than happy to really better understand your needs. This way we can offer a little bit more insight in terms of how you might be able to use them for your work. Okay, so the due date. The due date is going to really help me remember when the project needs to be wrapped up by, and is the date that the project's going to appear on the calendar. So in this case, the date that my client wants to see the finalized seminar. Now, the start date is going to give me a way of tracking when I start working on the project, and the end date is going to give me a way of tracking when I completed it. The detail field is going to give me a place where I can add some general details about what the project is for. So if we have a lot of projects on our plate, maybe we're collaborating with other team members, everyone's going to be on the same page about what the end result will look like. So I'm just going to say prepare and host a seminar specific to executing on plans and projects. The client can be connected to the project and given the role of client. Now, in this case, the client's going to be the company Acne Inc. So I'll connect the company, I'll give them the role of client. If there's going to be people from Acne Inc. that I'm going to be communicating with, or maybe other team members that I need to collaborate with, I'll be able to link them to the project as well and set their roles. So in this case, I'm just going to connect Willie from Acne Inc. That's been my main contact. If I have specifications, maybe job requirements that I'm going to need to track, I can also customize a form in Daylite that's going to create a template of all the information I need to collect. So forms are really handy. They can be set up with a number of different types of fields. So they can have text fields, number fields, currency fields, date fields, check boxes, drop downs, and more. It really makes it easy to capture the important details that you're going to need to track specific to a project. So this way you can really kind of make sure, okay, if I want to track the type of seminar and that's something I want to track with the form, I can set up my form. So if there's 4 different types of shows I do, maybe one might be, or a seminar I should say, one might be a trade show, another one might be an online webinar, another one might be a special event or a speaking tour or whatever that might be, I'll be able to track those different types with the use of my form, of course, along with all the other information that I want to make sure I'm capturing there. So again, it makes it really easy to capture that important information. Now, once I have captured the information I have, I'll be able to save the project. And this way, if I want to continue working with the project in Daylite, right after saving it, I can actually have Daylite take me immediately to it. So I'm just going to show you a quick trick here. Just by holding down the Option key when I click on Save here, Daylite will take me to that project. Now, I'll always be able to use the search in the top right-hand corner to look it up or find it within the My Project view. But I really like the Option key trick. Just makes it really easy to jump directly to the project afterwards. Anytime that we're going to be viewing the project, we're going to be able to reference the information captured in the form. Again, this way, if we need to quickly reference any of the details that we've captured, we're not going to have to waste any time hunting them down, maybe in an email or maybe fumbling through call notes to find that, that confirmation on a decision. The moment we find that out, we'll be able to put it into the form, like the requirements for the seminar. And this way, again, the second we capture, we can make sure we plug that in. So anytime we want to go back and we want to know, okay, well, what is the call to action from this event or whatever that term might be or field we're looking for, we'll be able to see that, that information. Any work that's going to be related to the project and any steps that we're going to want to follow can be viewed within the Tasks and Pipeline tab of the project. We'll be able to build a task list on the fly. We can also organize these tasks into actual customizable task lists. And so if I just create a couple of tasks here, you'll see what I mean. I'll just create 2. One's called Task A, the other is Task B. The second I hit Enter on the keyboard, the task is going to be added. This way, again, I can quickly plug those different tasks in. Now, once I have my tasks in Daylite, I'll be able to go through them and set additional details for them, but that's something I'm going to show in a little bit. Now, if you do have a process for a certain type of job that you take on, rather than having to create these tasks each time, you can actually predefine a pipeline that's going to be able to add all the work that you need to complete from start to finish. So going back to our example, since we need to host an online webinar, rather than having to create these tasks, we're going to use the pipeline. This way, Daylite can create the necessary tasks for us. So once we start that first stage, the different tasks and appointments that we have to do will be created for us. So now we can start to get to work and start doing the different things we have to do, like confirming dates or filling out a form or whatever that information might be. Having the project information organized and broken down into steps is helpful, but it's not going to paint the complete picture. So as you work on a project, you need to make sure that you're connecting any important communications or decisions surrounding that project. Let's go back to the Details and Activity tab. When you have a call regarding this project, you're going to be able to create a task or appointment to track the call. Now, if the call is spontaneous, I usually create a task. However, if you're going to schedule a call with someone, that's when I use an appointment instead. This way I can actually track the specific time block on my calendar that someone requires something from me, something, again, that we're going to see in a little bit. But when your phone rings, a great way to be able to track that call is by setting up a global shortcut for Daylite within the general preferences. So once you go into the general preferences here, this is where you can set up a keyboard shortcut that you can use to create a task for Daylite when you're working in any application on the Mac. So when you use the shortcut that you set up, a special Daylite task window will appear. And this way you can track whatever that item might be. So in this case, if it's a call, you'll be able to hit your shortcut, and then you can start figuring out who that call was with. Now, you'll notice that my start time has automatically been filled out for me. This way I'll be able to ensure that it starts tracking the call for me in terms of when that start time happened. And this way I know when the call took place. When it's over, I'll make sure I fill that out by checking off the task checkbox. But again, any information discussed during this call, I can make sure I add it into the task. Now, in terms of who I'm speaking with, I want to make sure I connect the person and maybe the project it's for. So if I know it's about the seminar I'm hosting and I know if the call is with Willie, I'll be able to make sure I link both the project and Willie. This way, when I'm looking at either the project or the contact record, I'll be able to see I had this call from Willie. Now, once I check off that task checkbox, that end time was filled in, and now I can save my task in Daylite. And you'll notice from the project, we'll now be able to see the task that we added. So again, using that global shortcut, it's a great way to be able to quickly create a task. This way you can start capturing the call as taking place. And that way, again, you have a place to track what was discussed. You also can connect it to who it's with and what it's for. So again, the person, and in this case, the project. And that way, again, when we go back later on, we'll be able to see that information. So it makes it really easy to ensure that we're capturing that communication. Now, just a quick tip on the topic of linking. If you are communicating with multiple people from the same company, it's really helpful having a single place that you can go to find any communication with that company, regardless of who it was with. So within the company preferences within Daylite, you can set Daylite to automatically link the company when activity is linked to a person in Daylite. This way, you don't have to think about who that person was. If you know, oh yeah, it was with Acne Inc., you can go directly to the company, and then you'll be able to see any of the correspondence that anyone's had. So it makes it really easy to be able to manage that information. Now, as I mentioned, if you need to schedule a call or maybe a meeting with a client regarding a project as an example, once the date and time is confirmed, you're going to be able to create an appointment. So this way you'll be able to track the specific time frame required. So if we need to, say, call Willie or meet with Willie at 1 p.m. next Monday, we'll be able to add that directly to the calendar. Now, we're going to go into this in greater detail in a moment, but if you do have any questions about using tasks versus appointments to track any of these commitments, please do not hesitate in posting a question or, again, scheduling a chat with our team. Now, just a quick tip, if scheduling time with clients is a big part of your day, a great way to streamline scheduling meetings with clients is by connecting Daylite to an online scheduling service, very much like what we do with Acuity Scheduling. So this uses the productivity tools add-on from iOS experts. I can definitely include a link for this if anyone's interested. But this is an add-on you can find from our add-on page as well at any time. Now, there are some other integrations as well. So if this is a point of interest, let us know. Be happy to point you in the right direction here. But connecting with an online calendar is a great way of being able to streamline this process. This way, you'll be able to share your calendar with a client or a prospect or whoever that might be. And that way, they can book a time based on their schedule. So again, if this is of interest, let us know. I'd be more than happy to help. Now, in addition to phone calls, you're also going to want to capture communication that might happen virtually, maybe face-to-face when meeting with a client or team member. So appointments are a great way to track time commitments. So the moment that you have a meeting, you're going to want to make sure you create that appointment. So let's review an appointment that I already have for another project. The appointment's going to share how the meeting's taking place, what needs to be discussed, who's going to be involved, and any of the important details the team's going to need. Now, more importantly, the appointment becomes a place where you and the team can connect any important information that you're going to want to reference either before, during, or after the meeting. You'll be able to reference any of the tasks that you've added to help remember the things you need to do or bring, maybe the important emails that you or the client or the team have communicated regarding this meeting, any of the files or documents that you might want to reference. The appointment's going to organize all the moving pieces the same way the project does at a greater scale. This way, when the meeting rolls around, everything is going to be linked together. Now, the client and any team members that are involved in the meeting will also receive a meeting invite that they can add to their calendar. So I'm going to use a little bit of movie magic to show this. When someone does not have Daylite, they're going to receive a meeting invite via email that they'll be able to add to their calendar. And once they add it to their calendar, that sends out an acceptance. So you'll actually get an update saying, yep, this person's accepted it. And that way you'll be able to tell from within Daylite. Now, when the team member is using Daylite, they're going to receive a notification within Daylite that they've been invited to a meeting that they can accept or decline. In addition, when creating the appointment, Daylite can also check the schedules of those invited team members. This way, if there's a conflict, you'll be able to easily find a spot that you can meet within that schedule window. So as we can see, we have the overlap. Well, no problem, just click and drag. And that way we can find a time block that works. And that way we can make sure when we're scheduling an appointment, we're not double booking someone. Now, on top of being able to track the phone calls and meetings, communication is often taking place through email. And it's really important to be able to connect any important emails that you send or receive, especially when they're regarding a project that you're working on. So when you install Daylite, it includes the Daylite Mail Assistant. The Daylite Mail Assistant, also known as DMA, is the sidebar that's added to Apple Mail and is the email app for the Mac. So from within the preferences for Apple Mail, you'll be able to add your email account. This way, any emails that you send or receive through Apple's email application will be able to be linked and stored in Daylite. So from within the Daylite Mail Assistant tab, this is where you'll have final control, or I should say, this is where you'll be able to choose what the email is going to be linked to automatically, or if you want to manually control it, you can do it as well. But you're always going to have final control based on the actual DMA pane. So let me kind of go through that a little bit and explain what I mean. When you're viewing or composing an email, to add or remove an email from Daylite, you can simply click on the Add to Daylite or remove, or in Daylite, click on the In Daylite to Remove It button at the top of the DMA window. Now below, you can choose what the email is going to be linked to. So the Daylite Mail Assistant is going to check the email addresses from the To and CC field just to see if it can match any of the people or companies that it has in Daylite. Now, when an email does not match, you can either add that email to a person that already exists, like you would if you were to receive a different email address from someone, or the ability to create a new contact record for that person with that email address. Once you have a contact record associated, you'll be able to link it. Now, you can also connect the project the email is regarding, or maybe in instances where you need to start a new project, you'll be able to create a new project using the Daylite Mail Assistant as well. So it makes it really easy to ensure that you're connecting the emails to what the email is about and who it's for. Now, if this email is about a task that you have to do for a project that you're working on, you'll want to have this information handy. So you'll also want to make sure the email is going to be linked to any of the tasks or appointments as well. This is especially helpful if a decision was made in this email where you're going to want to be able to reference that decision. You'll also be able to tag emails with keywords, classify them with a category, or even set the permission visibility of that email for Daylite, all from within the Daylite Mail Assistant. Now, personally, I don't classify my emails too often. It's really just enough to know I have them linked to who and what they're for. But I will classify one when it provides me value. So just a quick real life example. When I follow back to the webinar with that recording, when I get a response back where I get some feedback, what I'll do is I'll tag that email with a keyword of webinar feedback. That way I don't really have to think about who provided. I'll know afterwards when I look. But this way, when I want to go back and find those emails, it makes it really easy. So again, just a quick real life example there. Again, I don't classify them too often, but again, when it can give me a little bit of value like that. The Daylite Mail Assistant is also going to show any attachments that have been attached to the email. So DMA is only going to include selected attachments. You can have it set to automatically include them. You can do that within the preferences. Typically, I don't, because 99% of the attachments I receive just happen to be email signatures. And I don't really need that a million times in my database. But again, it gives you a little bit of flexibility to choose how you want to do that. Now, speaking of files, when you have a file or document that you want to be able to reference, especially a file that's going to be specific to a project, you can link them to the project in Daylite. So this way, when you or the team are working on it, you're going to have easy access to these files. So when you add a file, you can actually add a copy of the file to Daylite. You can link a file from your Mac or a shared volume, and you can also connect to an online service using a URL. Now, this is really handy. I'll show you a quick example here. But this way, if you wanted to have easy access to maybe some files you had in Dropbox, here's a personal Dropbox folder I have, just has some photos of some cars, so nothing fancy here. But just so you can see how this works. Once I add that URL, I can double click on it from within Daylite, and now I can have access to those files all stored within Dropbox. So makes it really easy to quickly reference those. That way, if there is something you want to be able to access on a regular basis, or while you're working on a project, or maybe a person, again, file references work on people as well, you'll be able to quickly find that information. So now that we have all the project information organized and we've connected the important communication, well, what's next? Well, it's important to know who has to do what by when. So let's talk about managing and tracking the work that has been done and needs to be done. There are a few views in Daylite that you can use to stay on top of the work that needs to be done. Now, as we've seen, you can view a project to see any of the tasks that are for that project. But when you have multiple projects with multiple tasks for each project, on top of all the work that you need to manage, you need to have a way to ensure that nothing's going to slip through the cracks. So when you want to focus on your tasks in Daylite, the home screen will let you quickly see the things that you need to do that are due or overdue. So let's just hop over there. So we'll be able to see those tasks. We also can see any of the tasks that we've added to our work list. So the tasks that we want to accomplish today, as well as any of the projects or opportunities that are wrapping up. Now, the home screen is also going to give us a glance at the week ahead, so we can see any other tasks or appointments or projects or opportunities that are coming up. Now, if I want to view what other team members have on their immediate plate, the team view is going to show information that is similar to the home screen, but broken down by team member. So we can toggle the team we want to view. We can trigger some quick team actions, like the ability of sending an email, scheduling a meeting, maybe jumping to the team calendar. And of course, you can also scroll down to view a team member's day as well as their week ahead. If you want to see a list of just the tasks you have, you actually have even more options. So the work list will show the list of tasks that you've added to your work list at the very top, in addition to all the other tasks that you have coming up, sorted by due date. So this is a handy way to stay on top of all your work so you can prioritize your work by due date. Now, when you start working on a task, you'll be able to reference any of the information that's connected to the task in Daylite, like the project the task is for. This way you can make sure you remember any of the important information. In addition to the work list, My Tasks is where you can see a complete list of all your tasks. Now, rather than this list being sorted by due date, in this view, your tasks are broken down by objective. So the project the task is going to be for. Now, at the top of the view is the tasks that have not been processed yet. So if you just create a task and you haven't really done anything with it yet, that's going to appear at the top. Once it has an objective, it's going to be showing up with the objective below. So as we can see, here are tasks broken down by objective. Again, the stuff that you have active objectives for, I should say. Now, when you want to stay on top of the tasks of several team members, you can use the all task view. So the all task view is a little bit different than the My Task view in that it's going to show every single task that's been created, whether it's open, whether it's due, or completed, someone else owns it, doesn't matter. Every single task is going to appear here. Now, from within here, you can actually filter at the top. One of the ways is using the filter bar. This way you can quickly toggle based on a person or a category. You also have the actual filter icon that you can use to create much more advanced filters. I've saved just a couple as smart lists, and I've organized them into folders. This way we can actually have task lists based on team members, whether it's a specific person or a team. Maybe we want to have task lists specific to a client or a prospect, or maybe a project task list so we can view just the tasks that are for a project we're working on. You have tons of flexibility here, and this way you can create the different smart lists you want to use. And again, you can organize them with folders, so it makes it really easy to set up the different task lists that you want to see. All right, so since we just finished discussing how you'll be able to track the work that everyone has to do, this is a great segue into prioritizing work so that you and your team are focusing on what's most important, the work that you need to deliver on for maybe a new client or an existing customer. So when you have a lot of tasks on your plate, the multi-column view is a great way to be able to review several tasks at once. This way you can make sure the team is focused on the most important work. You can customize what task information is displayed and how you want the tasks sorted. You can even sort by multiple columns if you hold down the Option key when you're clicking on the different column headers. This is really handy if you wanted to maybe organize the list of tasks by team member, then due date. This is going to make it really easy to scan the list of tasks to make sure everything is in order. So if we're looking at a task list by project, we'll be able to see that. Now, just a quick tip, after sorting, if you actually switch back to the list view, Daylite's going to remember the sort order. So it's a great way of customizing how you want your task views using the multi-column view. And then afterwards, if you wanted to continue working maybe in the list view instead, you'll be able to do that. When you have a task that you want another team member to prioritize, this is where you can delegate a task, and Daylite's going to add that task to their task list for them. This way, they'll be notified that they have to complete this task. Now, you can also choose to receive delegation update notifications from Daylite. This way, when you delegate a task to another team member, Daylite can keep you up to date. Now, if you want to view just the tasks you have delegated or maybe received through delegation, you have a delegated list. And of course, you can also use the all task view and then maybe use a keyword if you want to use maybe a keyword to track certain tasks for certain people. So maybe they're not necessarily a Daylite user, but you still need to help prioritize tasks for them. Really simple ways with the keyword. So if I have a contractor or another employer named Sean Miller, I'll be able to keep track of those tasks. And again, the nice thing about this is if you wanted to create task smart list based on the tasks that have a keyword for that team member, you can do that instead. So it doesn't have to be based on the person it's for. It could be based on other information that you're using. So again, maybe you want to be able to see a list of all the tasks that you're tracking for a person. You'll be able to create a smart list based on those external workers. So again, I have a folder for that. So if I go to this first one, this would be all of their tasks. I'm going to have another one for just their open tasks. So these are the tasks they still have to do. I could have another smart list, again, based on a project I'm working on. So I have tons of flexibility here. And that way I can choose what I want to see. So if I want to see a certain type of task or certain due date or whatever that information might be, I can set up my smart list for that. And that way I have my customized view. Now, if I want to share this information with this person, one of the easiest ways of doing this is just customizing the multi-column view to include the information that you want to send. I might want to put details in there as well, but I'll just copy and paste this, and this way you can see how this works. And that way I'll be able to go right into a spreadsheet, paste that in, and that way if I wanted to share the spreadsheet with that individual, I'll be able to send a list of tasks over. That way they can update it accordingly. And then once I get that information back, I can make sure I update my records. Now, if you do have to do this on a regular basis, having to do that one by one would be pretty daunting. So if you do want to be able to share every single task that's been created with someone outside of Daylite, you can connect Daylite with other apps and services using a third-party service that Daylite integrates with called Zapier. So from the add-ons page, you can learn more about the different Zapier add-ons, but one of them is the Zapier plus Google Sheets integration. So every time a task is created in Daylite, that information is going to be added to a Google spreadsheet. And then from there, It can be shared with whoever you want. Now, on the topic of sharing tasks with people outside of Daylite, another add-on that you might want to check out is the productivity tool add-on from iOS experts. Once you've selected some tasks or appointments, you can actually trigger them to be sent via email. But if you have any questions about that add-on, definitely get in touch with iOS experts. Let me know. I can help point you in the right direction, or get in touch with the team, and we can do that as well. But if you do want to share some information with other people, task information is also available through the API. So there's lots of options there. If there's anything that we can help point you in the right direction to, let us know, and I'd be more than happy to do so. So part of prioritizing your work is having a streamlined process so you know what you need to do by when. It's really tough to prioritize if you're not sure of that. It's also important to prioritize and streamline your process so you can really maximize the amount of work that you can get done. Now, resources are limited. Whether you're working by yourself or with a team, it's really important to be as efficient as possible. So pipelines will help you repeatedly follow a process from start to finish. This way you can focus solely on doing the work that you need to do. So let's jump to the pipeline preferences so we can take a moment to talk about customizing them. Now, when you take on a job, there's going to be many different things that you're going to need to do. At the start of a project, you might have a very clear understanding of every single thing that you're going to need to do. In other situations, you might need to spend a little bit of time at the beginning kind of figuring that out. Pipelines are going to help you manage both of these scenarios. So if we need to figure out what you need to do each time you take on a project, you're going to want to create a simple, generic, top-level pipeline that's going to take you through the steps of figuring those details out. So as an example, if you don't know what you'll need to do for a project, but you do know that you do need to reach out to someone to figure that out, the task could tell you precisely that. Schedule a call with client X to fill out the new project questionnaire form. This way, when you start a project, you're going to have a task in place to lead you. So you need to make sure that you fill out that form. Now, the nice thing about the form, just to add on, is, well, since I have the form filled out, I know what questions and information I need to collect. So that way I'm following that repeatable process each time. Now, there's many different ways that you can define the steps that you need to go through in completing a certain type of project. So here's a pipeline with only one stage, just called work to do. The tasks below represent all the individual things that need to be done that are going to track the necessary work for this project. So when a pipeline's applied to a project and that stage is started, the tasks and appointments set for that pipeline stage are going to be created automatically. Now, I'm going to show this in a moment, but this way, once you start the stage of a pipeline, again, you're not going to need to think about all the individual things you need to do. You can start working on the project according to the tasks and appointments that you set up ahead of time. When you set a task for a stage, you can predefine several task details like the title, the due date, details to help remind you or maybe even another team member what needs to be done for the task to be completed. When you set the due date, you can also set the due date to be due X number of days after you start the stage or X number of days before the end date that's set for that stage. This way, if you have a series of tasks that you need to do one after another, you can have them set to be due X number of days after start date. If you have things that need to be completed by a specific date, you'll want to create tasks with due dates that are due X number of days before the end date that's set for that stage. Let's create a new project with a pipeline stage so we can actually see this in action. So we're just going to call this project, example project. I'm just going to go right to the pipeline tab. This way we can see this. So once we apply the pipeline and click on the stage we want to start, we'll be able to see the start and target end date field I'm referring to. So these fields will only appear if tasks actually have due dates based on them. So once I actually set the appropriate dates and start my pipeline stage, Daylite's going to create the necessary tasks and appointments based on those due dates. Sorry, I had a little bit of a tickle there. Now, before I cancel this project, you're going to notice some of my tasks have the actual project name in their title. This is because those task titles had two @ symbols in the preferences. So this is a trick that you can use to personalize the titles of the tasks with the names of the project. So I'm just going to cancel this project before we go back into the preference here. But if we look at another pipeline that I've set up, we're going to actually have this one broken down into several stages. But again, we can see that double @ symbol. So we look at that first task there, the confirm dates for a double @ symbol. Well, again, that's going to get replaced with the name of the project. So if this was being applied to host a seminar for Acne Inc., it would say confirm dates for host a seminar for Acne Inc. All right, so now we have another project with multiple stages here. Let's take a look how this one's broken down. The first stage is a lock-in date / maybe collect information stage. You can probably come up with a better name, but these tasks are going to be focused on making sure that all the necessary information is collected. The next stage is going to be all about preparing for the online seminar. The content the seminar is covering, maybe the cue cards, presenter notes, client's approval, all this stuff to do to get ready for the actual event. The host a seminar stage is all about performing the seminar itself. Now, in this case, I just have a single task to remind me to apply an activity set that's going to apply all the tasks that I have to do. Now, this is helpful if I want to have a little bit of flexibility. So if I want to set up different activity sets based on what I might need to do for one webinar versus another, I'll have this added flexibility. Now, in this case, I'm not going to worry about this, but I just really wanted to highlight the flexibility here. If you don't need to do that, you can just have those tasks and appointments as part of the stage, just like the other stages. But again, just want to point out that flexibility. Moving along, post-seminar stage would represent all the things we need to do after a show, follow-ups with guests, reconnecting with the client, and then the final stage would be a wrap-up stage. So this stage would help me track all the things that need to be done to close the project out, from reviewing the project with the team, doing one last follow-up with the client, making sure all the necessary details have been captured and tracked within the project record. And that way I know everything is being done each time I take on a project. And that way, if there's certain information I want to be able to reflect on later on, I'm going to have that information filled out each time. Now, some of these tasks have actually been set for other Daylite team members. This way, regardless of the team member creating the project or advancing that pipeline stage, Daylite's going to create the necessary tasks and appointments for the team member that's going to be responsible for these tasks. Now, if the team member does not use Daylite, using the keyword example from earlier, we can set keywords on these tasks. So this way, when the stage is set and the tasks and the appointments are created for the project, they'll also have the necessary keywords to apply. And this way, if you have smart lists set up to see those tasks based on those keywords, we'll be able to easily utilize those lists we've set up. So you can really create a lot of harmony between the different features here. So that way, again, if you have a smart list set up to see certain tasks for certain people, you'll be able to ensure that those tasks are getting the appropriate classification, category, and keywords each time. Now, if you are very serious about your time management, you can also use appointments within your pipeline to track the time that's going to be required to do the actual work. So here's a copy of the same pipeline that we saw, but this one is going to have appointments. So let's go over this one. So here's the online seminars with time blocks, and this is going to have appointments as well. So the idea behind this is if you know that you're going to need, say, 15 minutes to work on this stage or get the stage rolling or whatever that might be, you'll be able to set the appointment. That way you can make sure when you start that stage, you set that time accordingly. And that way you can make sure that you're putting that time towards this project. Now, if you know that you need 15 minutes, you can set that to 15 minutes and schedule it. Now, the key here is if you realize that, okay, well, I'm working on this project, but it takes me 30 minutes, you'll be able to adjust it accordingly. This way, the next time you take on that same type of project, you're going to have 30 minutes set aside for the appointment. And of course, if you need to schedule multiple time blocks to do the work that's going to be associated with the stage, you can create additional appointments as well. And the idea behind blocking off your time on your calendars is as your day unfolds, you're going to have the necessary time blocks in place to make sure that you are putting your energy towards the most important work that you need to do. This way, you can make sure that you are executing on your plans and projects. Now, for some teams, it's also important to make sure that you stay within a budget. So if cost tracking is important to you, you can take your time tracking a step further. And with the use of the time and budget add-on, this is going to allow you to allocate costs associated with the tasks and appointments. So depending on the person, depending on the type of classification, you can make sure that you're tracking your costs accordingly and staying within budget. So time and budget is a good one to check out. Another one from iOS experts. They've definitely got a lot of cool add-ons that they built for Daylite, but definitely check it out. It's got some other cool features as well. So again, if that's of importance to you, be sure to take a peek. So let's go back. Let's actually create one more project using a pipeline with time blocks. This way we can see how this unfolds. So I'm going to create another project. We'll call this one Seminar for Shoes International. We'll give it a category of seminar. We're going to skip the other fields. This way we can go right to the pipeline. Now, once we set the pipeline and the first stage, so we're going to do one with the time blocks. We'll hit choose pipeline. We'll select the intro stage. We'll hit change stage. Now that we've done that, it's going to create the necessary tasks and appointments for us. And this way we can make sure we're scheduling it into our calendar. Now, typically what I'll do is I'll just use the schedule feature here. This way I can take a quick look at my calendar and realize, okay, well, if I got some time at 4 o'clock, I'll just plug it in there. And that way I know at 4 o'clock, I'm going to be putting some time towards Shoes International. So again, if we look at the calendar now that we've added that, we'll see at 4 o'clock today, I have that appointment right in my calendar. So nothing else can take that time away. Now, not only will pipelines help us speed up the process of creating projects, but they really help lay the necessary foundation so we can streamline our use within Daylite. Let me take a moment to expand on what I mean. When you have a lot of projects on your plate, it's easy for projects to fall behind, especially if they're on hold because you're waiting on details from a client. So to make sure that you can stay on top, an easy way to quickly find and follow up with an email is by setting up a smart list and leveraging a letter template within Daylite. So to find the people that you're going to want to reach out to, you can set up a smart list, and that smart list can include just the people that you need to follow up with. And that can be based on their linked project and email information. So this smart list is going to be broken down by criteria that we want Daylite to match against and the criteria that makes Daylite exclude someone from this list. So this smart list is only going to show us the people that have a project linked to them. So that's what this first row means. So they have a project linked to them, but that project has to have them as a role where they're the decision maker. And they also have to have a form linked to the project where the contents requirement field is blank. So a person has a project linked to them, their role in that project is decision maker, and the form linked to that project that's capturing that important information has a field that's blank. Now I can see a list of those people. However, I don't want to see someone that already received an email with the subject line, urgent, still waiting on content requirements, and has a create date within the last few days. So if I want to set maybe 5 days as that window, I can set that as my criteria. The idea behind this is if I want to be able to reach out to these people, I have my letter template, but I don't want to pester them too often. So this way, the second I reach out to them, I'm going to have an email created with that subject. So that's going to exclude them from this list. So since the subject, again, is the email, or I should say the subject of the email is based on the letter template, when we generate this email, we're going to see that update. So we're going to write letter in Daylite. We're going to merge the letter using that template. Once we hit merge, it's going to create our email. The subject gets updated. The content gets updated based on our letter template. And now we can quickly reach out. So these are people that we're waiting on information for because we know this because we have our project for them, but we don't have that field filled out. Now, once we capture the information, we plug that into that form. That way we can make sure we're only targeting the people that we don't have information for. But this way, again, we're not going to pester someone too frequently either because now that they have their email, they're going to be removed from the list. Now, again, you can customize how you want that. If you don't want 5 days to be that number, maybe you want a week, maybe you want 2 weeks, whatever makes sense for you. But that way, again, you can stay on top of those people without having to devote a whole lot of mental energy. This way you can keep your mind on the task at hand and just rely on the process you've set up to make sure that you have a way of to keep pushing those people along. But again, that's really where you can really streamline your use within Daylite, is when you start to have that foundation to really help, I guess, automate your processes a little bit. Now, if you need to follow up multiple times and you don't want to repeatedly send a follow-up email, you could even build multiple smart lists to support an entire process. So one smart list could be a list of people that need an email. Another one might be if they need a call or whatever that information might be. And you'll be able to set up your smart list accordingly. So let's just create a second smart list together. Since we want to find people who have received the follow-up email, we can add that as the criteria. So we'll say, okay, show us people that have an email with the subject. And again, we're going to use the same name of the letter template. So I'll just paste that in. So now we can see people that receive that reach out. And maybe for this smart list, we want to exclude someone that hasn't replied to the email. So we could just say, okay, show us people that do not have an email with the subject is and then again, the same name. As we know, when someone responds to an email, what happens? Well, they get the in front of it. This way we'll be able to now find a list of people that haven't responded to that email. Now, I probably wouldn't use this one necessarily because maybe they gave me a call. I get that information. Again, I'll probably want to base it on the form, but this is a really easy way that you can build a multiple smart list to support your entire process. This way, if there's several steps you want to go through, if someone still hasn't gone back to you, you can make sure you nudge them accordingly. Now, regardless of the method you use, again, as long as these smart lists are excluding people that maybe have their content requirements added to the form, these people will be removed from the smart list the moment that you get those details from them, whether it's by email, whether it's by phone, maybe you run into them, whatever that situation might be, you can make sure you have an updated list of people that you're going to want to contact. Now, this is just a couple examples of smart lists that you could use as working lists. Another example might be if you want to follow up at the end of the year, maybe with clients that you've had a completed project for this past calendar year. Well, you could build a smart list of people that have completed work this calendar year just based on their project information. This way, when you or a team member follow up with that client, whether it's by phone or email, you can make sure you set up your smart list accordingly. This way, once you reach out to that person, in this case, we'll just use another smart list a letter template we set up, I should say. And this way, again, the person's going to be removed from the list the second we reach out to them. So if multiple people are doing this activity, you know you're not going to have multiple people reach out to the same individual. So again, you can really build a lot of really cool working lists within Daylite. It really just depends on what you're trying to do. But again, if you have any questions about this, please do not hesitate in posting a question using the Q&A feature, or even follow up with the team afterwards and schedule a call. We'd be more than happy to help point you in the right direction. So in addition to building streamlined processes, every so often, you're going to want to review your projects as a whole. This way you can notice trends and behavior and ideally make improvements. So using the insight view, this is where you have a bird's eye view of your information. So if you're viewing my projects as an example, Insight View will only show the information for the projects that you are actively working on. Whereas if you view all projects, you're going to see a breakdown of every single project created in Daylite. You'll be able to see the number of times a pipeline's been used, the number of projects that are in each stage, breakdown of the categories and keywords, date graphs, and more. If you hover your mouse over any of the attributes in this view, you can see them light up. You can also select one and drill in further if you want to say, okay, I just want to focus on the family portraits. Well, now all the information is only specific to family portraits. Now, right off the bat, you'll notice, well, we can find a bottleneck that way. Okay, we have all these projects in that consulting stage. Well, again, I have a lot of mock information in here, so it's not the most accurate. But if it was, that tells us, well, why am I creating all these projects that are in this first stage? Well, is it because I just created them, or is there something else going on? If we wanted to kind of drill in, we can actually use the multi-column view Again, we're only looking at those very specific projects. And again, we can see, well, okay, if we look at the ones that are in that stage, we can see, well, they're all abandoned. Well, if I'm creating these projects, and again, this is just some information I'm playing around with, but if I'm creating all these projects that I'm just abandoning in the very first stage, well, why am I doing that? I'm wasting a lot of time and energy doing something I don't need to do. So is it because I'm not capturing something ahead of time? Is it because something's happening that's resulting in us having to abandon these projects? How can I avoid that from happening in the future to new projects I take on? This is all really important insight that you can take in and really make tweaks and improvements to your process to make sure that you avoid these caveats or hurdles next time, so that you can make sure you're streamlined this process to maximize the amount of work that you can get done. That's really what it comes down to. Is just finding your pitfalls and hurdles and improving them. What's taking you the most time? Those types of things can really go a long way. With all your moving pieces, steps, communication, and history organized using a project, and of course the tools to help you prioritize and streamline and review your processes, you're going to be on your way to building a repeatable process that you can use to make sure that you are executing on your plans and projects. So last but not least, let's discuss how you and your team can avoid work from slipping through the cracks. Now, some of this we've kind of talked a little bit about throughout the presentation today, but there is one other thing that I wanted to kind of touch on as well, just as it's kind of the final safety blanket, so to speak. So as we talked about today, having strong visibility is a great way to ensure nothing's going to slip through the cracks. So you can save your different views, and that way you can make sure you're on top of all your work and on top of all the stuff that you have to do. By creating project or content calendars using SmartLists, it's a really good way of being able to review your information on a calendar. So as an example, when the marketing team meets, we actually leverage a SmartList to view all the different content that we have going out, from the marketing campaigns, social media, blog posts, the webinars themselves. All the content is laid out. And this way, when we're meeting, we can quickly see from a calendar view, well, what's going on when. Now we have projects and we have other information in other places as well. So it's not just that, but it gives us that view that we can leverage. So again, when we're meeting on a week-to-week basis, we can say, okay, this week we have this going on, next week we have that, all our ducks in order, blah blah blah. It helps to give us some direction. All by having a smart list, viewing the different appointments, all-day appointments, if you're wondering, and that way we'd be able to manage the different things that are happening on the different days. Now, this process really gives us a simple way to do a final check, and again, that way any articles or any other content that we need to create or publish is going to be ready. Now, the different views or smart lists that you set up are really helpful to ensure your tasks and appointments do not slip through the cracks. However, this is the added layer of security I wanted to bring up. To make sure that you don't miss any tasks or appointments, you can set up default reminders. So when you create a task or an appointment, you can set reminders on the fly, but from within the notification preferences, you can set up some defaults. So if you want to do it on the fly, this is where you can do that. So if we want to set up a message with a sound, we have a few different options there. But typically what I'll do is I'll just set up my defaults. This way I don't have to think about it. So if we go into the notification preferences, this is where we can set them up for both tasks and appointments. So if you wanted to have a reminder, say 9 a.m. on the day a task is due, you can set up your reminders accordingly. This way, anytime you create a task or anytime you receive a task through delegation, you can have your default reminders applied. And that way you'll be reminded the day of, oh yeah, you have to get this done. Hopefully I catch it before then. There's nothing worse than seeing something on your plate the day of, but obviously with my other views, I should be able to do that. But worst case scenario, again, I have my security blanket. Now, once your notifications fire off, you're going to see them within the notification view here. Just to point out, you can also disable reminders for tasks that are marked as done. So if you're ahead of the game and you're using your smart list and your working list effectively, and you are completing your tasks before they're actually due, you won't have to worry about those reminders firing off. But if you do have a bunch, not to worry. You can go down to the very bottom and hit the dismiss all. You do have your other views as well, so you don't have to worry about using your reminders as a working list. It's just to notify you of these things. The one exception, as you saw, was appointments. You still have to accept or decline those, as we're not going to automatically assume one thing or the other. But again, really good way of being able to clean up those notifications. So that's the security blanket. Again, default reminders. That way you can make sure any of the tasks or appointments that you've set up for yourself or have been delegated to you, you can make sure that you have your reminders in place. Thank you so much for hanging out this afternoon, and have a fantastic, productive rest of your week. Bye for now.